Recently, we've talked a lot about actual moves that have been happening, and a lot of moves, the Dallas Fuel, etc., 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 and there's been a lot being going on. Let's talk about potential in this video, shall we? I'm going to pick 3 teams that, in my opinion, have got the biggest potential for improvement during this off-season transfer window. And what I mean by that is that they've cleared out most of their roster, and there's a lot of space for them to include new players into that roster that can turn them from a mediocre team or a bad team to an incredibly good team. Much like we've seen with the Dallas Fuel, who have turned around their fortunes, most likely looking at their roster, from a team that was mediocre and not doing very well to a team that could potentially challenge for the league title. So it's going to be really interesting, and I think this is going to be an interesting video to take a look at these 3 teams. So first on this list is the Florida Mayhem. Now, the Florida Mayhem weren't a bad team in 2020, were they? Let's be honest. They've had a lot of success in the league. They came second in the May Melee finals. They lost to the San Francisco Shock. I don't know why I was saying Vancouver Titans. That was a little bit of a weird one. But in the regular season, they came 6th. And that is incredible for the Florida Mayhem, considering the improvement they've shown since the previous 2 seasons before that, where they'd been pretty much bottom of the league, or not far off it. So Florida Mayhem were a different team in 2020, and this new look Florida Mayhem will want to take it a step further in 2021 and try and challenge for that title, which they were a little bit off of in 2020. So they have, however, made quite a few moves, and this means that the Florida Mayhem are shaping up to have a very, very interesting transfer window, or the rest of it anyway. So let's take a look at them. Currently, they still have assigned to their org, shall we say, 4 players. So this is going to be BQB, Gargoyle, Yaki, and Gangnam Jin. So, when we look at these 4 players, there's only 2 of them that are actually locked down to 2021. This is Yaki and Gangnam Jin. They were on multi-year deals when they were signed in from Runaway to the Florida Mayhem. And it's interesting, that's 2 players you really want signed down. And I think that's 2 of the best players we saw for the Florida Mayhem last season, although they did have great pop-off potential. So, the other 2 players, Gargoyle and BQB. I think these are 2 players that Florida really want to sign down. Gargoyle had a great time of it in 2021, really consistent. He wasn't the best main tank, off-tank I should say, but I think he's been very, very good. BQB had a breakthrough season. Now, BQB was amazing last season, and I think he is a very vital part of the Florida Mayhem, and they need to try and hold on to him. But that it means, can they extend his contract? That is going to be a very, very big part of what they do. BQB is also the longest serving player on the Florida Mayhem right now, so that's great news, and it's been very, very good to see BQB stepping up in 2020. But that obviously is just 4, so they're missing, a main support, a main tank. They also need backup players to be alongside that. You need at least 8 players assigned by January the something, I can't remember the exact date, and it means the Florida Mayhem are due to make a lot of moves. Now, they've been linked with Sanguinar, although that was then debunked. I think, honestly, Sanguinar would have been a lovely pickup for the Florida Mayhem. I really, really think so. The question is, they lost Fate, right? They've lost Fate to the Shanghai Dragons. That's a loss. I think they can replace him with a very good main tank. And I think they can replace him with Sado. If they're willing to dip their hands in their pockets at the Mayhem, Sado would be a great pickup. I also think if they can pick up a nice stable main support. Now, Sanguinar, honestly, I think that would have been a good pickup, but it doesn't look like we're going to see that. So it'll be interesting to see which way the Florida Mayhem go down, but they must start off with re-signing BQB and Gargoyle, in my opinion. I think that is incredibly vital to the Mayhem's success. The only way I see them dropping Gargoyle is if they've got someone better in the offing. So say they had a link to perhaps signing Fury, who is currently a free agent, then I could understand them dropping Gargoyle, because in my opinion, Fury is an upgrade on Gargoyle. But it doesn't seem likely, does it? So I think if the Mayhem make the right signings, we will see a Mayhem much more powerful than they were in 2020. So that's why they make it onto this list, but they are the lowest on the list. Because I'm not convinced that the Mayhem will make the moves that will see them really propel themselves up in the league. But they did get rid of Byron, Carrion, Chris, and Sire player. A lot of deadwood in the team, and Chris wasn't up to scratch. So I'd like to see the improvement they can get upon Chris in that main support role. Okay, the next thing we're going to take a look at is the green part of Texas. This is the Houston Outlaws. So again, they're a team that have 4 players at the moment assigned to their org. It's Meko, Hydration, Dante, and Boink. But of those players, just like the Florida Mayhem, only 2 of them are nailed down for 2021. That's Hydration and Dante. I think 2 really, really good players. Like, really, really good players. Dante, I think, has always been not underestimated. I think he's been dealt a harsh hand in some respects when he's been at teams. He was at Houston Outlaws, which, you know, tough team to be at in current circumstances. And then he was at San Francisco Shock when he was very, very overshadowed by very good DPS players. He's never had the chance to be that poster boy DPS player on a good team with good players around him. Then we come to Hydration, who's incredibly flexible. We saw him move over to the main tank role to come in for Muma last season, and again, he is currently assigned as a tank player. So it could be that Hydration is going to stay in that role, but he can also obviously play the DPS. And he is incredibly flexible, one of the most flexible players in the league, and I think it's a great thing to have him aboard. Now, Boink, I don't think I don't say care about Boink, but I don't think Boink is necessarily good enough to fit into a good roster. So that's something I would say about him. Meko is a weird drop. Like a weird drop. Meko is still, in my opinion, a really, really great off-tank who, you know, struggled in a tough team last season. Like a tough team. And I hope that he can find a new home if he doesn't get re-signed to the Houston Outlaws, because I really, really, really think he is worthy of a league place. It'd be interesting to see what happens. Maybe he reunites with Mano at Philadelphia Fusion. But this means that the Outlaws need to make moves. They have been linked with Super. They have been linked with Piggy from Talon, I believe, or formerly Talon. They've been linked with they've been linked with Happy as well. And it's very interesting because a lot of those would be very big moves. Like, if they were to sign Happy is a fantastic hit scan player. And then, if they were to get someone like Super is at the San Francisco Shock. He's a great player. A great player. He popped off in the grand finals on the Roadhog. And I think that is amazing if the Outlaws could pick up someone like Super. Although we are working on rumours here. Nothing confirmed, just talk around the league. So the Outlaws also made a very significant signing in bringing on Junkbuck as co-assistant head coach. And co-assistant head coach, co-head coach, whatever. Moving along. Junkbuck comes in from the San Francisco Shock, and I think that's an incredible addition to the coaching staff at the Houston Outlaws. He comes in with a wealth of experience, including, obviously, being under the guidance of Krusty at the Shock. Krusty is arguably the best coach in the league. He's demonstrated that for years now, firstly at the Boston Uprising and then at the San Francisco Shock. And if he can translate some of that to the Houston Outlaws and what he's learned, then he will do great things at the Houston Outlaws, and he will be able to take them in the right direction, something that they haven't been going in a long time, to be honest. They used to be a team that could compete at the top. Remember with the Jake days in the inaugural season, when they were actually stage playoff in the very, very early part of that season. They were a good team back then, but it all fell off, and they've never really regained any momentum. And it's been a rough off season. They've lost 2 players to the Dallas Fuel, Rappel and Jaxa. Like, 2 players to the Dallas Fuel, your, like, Texas rivals must hurt. 2 decent players as well. Jaxa was great earlier in the season for the Houston Outlaws. So there's rebuilding to do there. But with the right signings, and this is what this video all hinges on, with the right signings, I think these teams can really turn their fortunes around. Really, really turn them around. So this is why I say there's a lot of potential in these teams. And it looks like they're going to build around Dante, which I think is a good idea. I think Dante has the potential to be a really good DPS in this league. And if the Houston Outlaws can build a very good team around him, imagine a DPS like Dante alongside Happy, then they bring in perhaps Super and Piggy, you're going to see an Outlaws that will be actually very decent. Very, very decent. I don't think it's a league challenging Outlaws, but it's an Outlaws that can really do well. Lastly, though, we're going to take a look at the Washington Justice, and I think that is the team with the most potential because they've indicated some moves to me that look already very, very good. So, the Houston Outlaws actually still have a lot of players technically still assigned to their roster because of the 2021 clause thing that runs out very, very soon. So they have Tuba, Aimgod, Stitch, Janu, Decay, Mag, and Jerry. But all of those, the only ones nailed down are Tuba, Jerry, Mag, and Decay. So, Tuba, he really proved himself at the end of last season. He really proved himself at the end of last season, and I think he was great. We had a lot of question marks about him earlier on in the season, but he really did prove himself. Decay came in just before the playoffs for the Washington Justice and turned this team's fortunes around. The meta favoured them, of course it did, but man oh man, this changed this team, and it changed them massively. So, to sign him down for 2021 is already a massive, massive boon for the Washington Justice. When we look at the rest of the players, though, so they brought in Mag from Runaway. He's the main tank at Runaway, or was the main tank at Runaway. One of the best main tanks in Korea, in Contenders Korea. So this is massive. Like, if they can build a team around Mag, it will be a good team. Because Mag has historically been on Runaway. He's historically been on a good team. Very organised, very good coaching, developed extremely well. We know how good Runaway players are developed in Korea. So, Mag is a fantastic pickup for the Washington Justice, and I didn't expect the Washington Justice to have the pulling power to pick him up. I thought it would be a team much further up the league. Like when you see New York Excelsior drop Manu, you think, are they going to pick up Mag? If Philadelphia Fusion are looking at a new main tank, well, they were looking at a new main tank anyway, are they going to pick up Mag? Florida Mayhem, maybe, because they got heavy links to the Runaway rosters, obviously with Yakigen Namjin and their coach Kuki, who was at the Runaway as a coach. So they have heavy links to them. He could have gone there, but Mag went to Washington Justice, and that means Washington Justice have pulling power. And if they can pair him up with a really good off tank, then they've got a really, really good tank line. Imagine they pair him up with someone like Meko. Imagine they pair him up with someone like Fury. QOQ is now on the market, and QOQ was the tank pair for Mag at Runaway once upon a time. So there are a lot of possibilities for this Washington Justice roster to add a lot of really, really good parts to this team. Then we come to Jerry. Jerry was at the Boston Uprising last season and was one of these shining lights at the Boston Uprising. I think a load of people love Jerry. Absolutely load of people love Jerry. Great pickup from the Washington Justice, and he's not a bad player either. And it's time for him to improve and prove himself on a better team. And this could be his time. It really, really could. So when you see a DPS line of Tuba, Decay, and Jerry, that looks really, really good. We're not expecting Stitch and Janu to stay, which I think is an inevitable loss for the Washington Justice, but I don't think it's a crippling loss. If they can replace them with significant signings, someone like QOQ in the off-tank role or Fury, then they bring in some really good supports. And there are tons of great supports around in Contenders Korea, which I would expect the Washington Justice to take their lead from, because obviously they're an all-Korean roster. You've got MCD at Element Mystic. He has been heavily linked with other teams though. Then you've got Aztac, who's a flex support at WGS Phoenix. I was extremely impressed with his display against Runaway in the Grand Finals of Korea not so long ago on the Zenyatta, where he popped open a second point, a Temple of Anubis all by himself. And he is honestly a flex support I hope gets a place in the league, because darn, he was good and deserves a shot. There's someone who could possibly play for the Washington Justice, and then you just got to pair him up. And if you can bring in talent like that, you know, Aztac alongside someone like MCD, then you go alongside Jerry, Mag, someone like QOQ or Fury, Decay, Tuba. All of a sudden you're looking at a stacked Washington Justice roster that will not just be a mediocre middle of the league team. I would be very confident in hyping up that team to be a top 6 team. There's no reason why they couldn't be. They just have to be sent in the right direction by coaching. To end this video in a sort of a big round, there are a lot of improvements being made by a lot of teams in this league during this offseason. We're expecting Florida Mayhem to still be competitive. Dallas Fuel are now becoming competitive. The Washington Justice look like they're becoming competitive. The Houston Outlaws could be becoming competitive. The British Hurricane, I keep saying, their London Spitfire could be becoming more competitive than they were last season, a mid-table team. The Valiant will always be competitive. Gladiators improving. Shock, perhaps losing a little bit of that grip on power. Same with the Shanghai Dragons in APAC. NYXL a little bit up in the air. Paris Eternal plummeting. It's going to be shaken up. But with the moves that are being made, it also looks like this 2021 season could be one of the most competitive yet. And if so, we're in for some incredible Overwatch in 2021, and I can't wait. We will continue to keep an eye on these transfer moves as they continue to roll in. It was a quiet day yesterday, but I'm expecting more and more as we head towards that 2021 extension deadline and the deadline of the 2020 contracts running out. But I am going to leave it here for this one. So thank you guys so much for this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.